Alright, so I think I'm going to see if I can get my brain around to talk about rating a little bit right now. More or less just not so much what I'm writing, but how I'm writing, kind of how I'm working through everything, kind of the process as I currently have it. Now, keep in mind, I'm still very much a novice at this, and this is just how I'm doing it, going about it as I'm floundering around and figuring it out myself, what works best for me. And for the most part, how I start out is more or less what kind of how do I want to put it? What kind of a story or a narrative I want to, or maybe what kind of characters that I want to write about. It's kind of both of those things. Depends on which interests me most, right? But so far it's mostly been start with a premise, and now I change things around a lot. Like until I actually sit down and kind of finalize with myself what I want everything to be around. A way that I've heard it seen or I've heard it said is playing around in the sand, right? Or playing in the sandbox. I do a lot of that until I find something that I am happy with and actually want to write about, such as with what I am currently writing about. Um, it started off more or less. I have other stories that I want to write, and I wanted what you call it, and I wanted practice writing before I get into actually doing like novels, like full scale novels. So it started with the characters for me, and then more or less went okay. So what do these like? More or less, I started with the characters, and the entire story is just how these characters are dealing with themselves and the situation that they're currently in, right? That is how it started. That's where I'm going. And for the most part, I had an idea for a couple of the characters, and the situation that they're in. So, like, the situation is that they were outcasted from essentially the city that they were a part of, right? So the characters are children, and they are essentially outcasted children that, for some reason or another, for one reason or another, for each of them, like the system didn't want them, so they're essentially thrown away to, well, to die. All right, there's no good way to put that. So they're now all in essentially a hellscape, just trying to survive, right? And not just trying to survive the hellscape, but also figure out themselves and each other, right? And more or less, that's what I'm working with, right? That's where I'm at. So what I originally did was, so I have essentially like not the scenery, but like I know what the place is. I know how it works. Even though I'm also still developing it some as I'm writing the story, because it's the first time I'm actually like going super in depth with how this area works. Like I had an idea of how I wanted everything to go, but now I actually have to put it into practice. So there are certain cracks that I didn't realize existed, so I'm smoothing them over as I go. But in general, so I had the area already worked out, but now I have these kids, right? And a lot of me coming up with the story and these kids as characters is me just asking why a lot, right? So like it's one of those like, okay, so what would cause the kids to get outcasted from where they're at? Well, they would have to do something. They have to do something wrong and they would have to not conform, right? But now the question is, so how many characters should I have? Originally it was going to be 5, but then 5 ended up being too many. And it was just because originally I just wanted a bunch of different ideals and personalities, but I ended up essentially with 2 characters that would end up filling the same like role and personality, so I ended up just combining them. I just took the one out, and then everything that was going to be a part of that character, I just fused in with the other one, because there's the story's going to be told primarily from one point of view, and the new character that was supposed to be entering the group, whose point of view it was supposed to be, was going to be the same as another character that was already there. And it's like, well, at this point, why do that? So essentially, what I did was I got these 4 kids now, and I went, okay, what are their personalities going to be like? Who do they need to be? And essentially, what I did was I went and I started using, well, these things. right? Now this comes from another YouTuber that is around. It is this YouTuber. Uh, Originally he was a writing YouTuber. He has since diverged into other stuff, right? But as long as he keeps these videos up, these are really good resources, really helpful, and they have really helped me see a different way of doing things and thinking through things because he was or is very logical in how he does things and structures them. And specifically where I found this, and then there is a couple more here. You got all of these essentially. They came from this YouTube video, which I have opened right here. And then you click on here, and it'll take you here. And then here's where you can download them all. Um, Very helpful resources. So essentially, I just used those. Where's my brain at? I just went through and used those and actually created. Hold on, let me go back here and actually created the characters, right? So right here is all the characters, and I went and made one, like filled in a bunch of the stuff for each of them. Oh, this one needs updated. Essentially just went and now this is essentially just my first take of this character, right? So then once I went through with all of the characters, wrote this out so I had a baseline of what I'm working with for each character, I then went through and started essentially just making the story. Because to me, story writing should be more about characters. Like it's not about the plot driving the characters forwards. The character should be driving the plot forwards, right? And everything that happens in a story should be just because of how the characters are and how they're interacting, if that makes sense. So that's how I wanted to do things. So essentially, I went, this is like I had the area and I created all the characters, and then I just kind of threw them in, right? And then I went, okay, so how would these characters be interacting with each other? How would they be interacting with the environment? And where would they end up going, right? So I did end up coming up with essentially, I'm going to say, a skeleton of the story that is going to be happening, right? Like what is going to be happening to them, where they're going to be going, right? So it's not just going to be meandering, right? Just random meandering. I did go through, and originally what I did and was doing was I was going through. Sorry if this is jarring. And essentially, so I have three different versions here, is I just went through and I just started writing, right? What I was doing was essentially I was doing what I said like not to be doing, where the plot was driving the characters. That's essentially what I did. I was just trying to write and get the story down with the characters in it, and then I was going to go back and I keep putting my OBS over my other screen, which is why I'm looking at the wrong place, and just go through and just rework it afterwards. I just wanted the story down on paper with the characters in it, and then I would go and, well, doctor it up. I'd go and actually turn it into something worth reading afterwards. But I started running into this problem where, so I've learned my least favorite part of writing is that part. Actually writing. Like, actually coming up with and making the story the first time, right? That is my least favorite part. It is followed up by my favorite part, which is which is the rewriting, right? The original take, the original writing, I hate and it sucks to me. But going back through and rewriting it, like once there's already a story in place that I can then go restructure, rebuild, tear apart, cut things out of, add stuff to, that is just like my bread and butter. I love that stuff. Um, but then after that, then there's the editing, making sure that all the characters sound like they should, and make sure that they are progressing in their arcs and all that stuff. All that stuff also sucks. But I love the rewrite so much. But what happened is right now, and the reason that there is three versions is one because I didn't want to just like delete old work because like I was just deleting and rewriting huge swaths of what I had already written, and I want to keep that for potential inspiration later, right? Because once I delete that and erase that, I'm never getting it back, and that is still something I wrote about these characters. That if I get stuck somewhere else, I can always go back through and leaf through the old takes that I had and go, "Oh, that was a good idea. Maybe I could repurpose that," right? And I just don't want to lose it forever. But The reason that there is the three versions is because I get stuck, right? Like I can only and I moved it again like a dummy. Like I can write and force myself to keep creating, keep creating, keep doing this thing that I hate and I hate, but eventually I do burn out, right? And then whenever I burn out, then I don't want to work on it. Then it becomes a slog, it becomes a chore. So what I end up doing, and I was trying really hard not to do this at first, like version 3 is the first real rewrite that I'm doing, is I was trying to get the whole story down. The original, where is it? I'm currently at page 37. I currently have 37 pages written in Microsoft Word. Now that's more like 75 or something pages at the 275 word per page, whatever, but that'll change enough that it doesn't really matter. But I'd gotten that far just forcing myself through, and then I just stopped working on it for a couple of weeks, and I hated myself for not working on it, but I didn't want to work on it. And I finally cracked and went, okay, I'm just going to start rewriting and hope that as I'm rewriting, I can just continue off, right? Because even during my first writing, like I have gaps, right? To where like I didn't know what to write and I couldn't come up with anything compelling in a couple of days, so I just skipped it and moved on. I need to fill in those gaps anyway during this rewrite. And I'm hoping that as I'm going through with this rewrite, it'll just be like I hit that bridge or that block that I had, like where I just couldn't come up with anything and I was losing steam and motivation, and hopefully I'll just be able to move right through it and actually continue writing the story. With my last short story, that's essentially how it worked out for me. Is anytime I would get stuck with coming up with something new, I just go and rewrite, and then that would carry me through to help me continue writing past whatever I was stuck on. But also with that first short story that I wrote, I had a lot of trouble like skipping a scene. Like if I couldn't come up with something compelling or something that I liked, I would just get hung up on it for potentially weeks because I wanted to continue right where I left off, not skip and then continue forward and then go back to that scene that I was missing later. Um, which is also something very handy to do, right? There is no right or wrong way to create, there's no right or wrong way to do things. Right now I'm just sharing how I'm getting through it and how I'm doing things. Um, but yeah, so right now that's where I'm at, right? I've said in other videos about me writing and creating and stuff like that, but I've never really shown any of my work or what I've been doing. I'm kind of I'm very hesitant to actually like release what I'm writing early. I honestly, so like there is the model of like weekly releases or monthly releases of stuff, and that works really well for some people, and some people really like it. I personally don't like those at all. I want whenever I release a work out into the world, I want it to be a finished product. I want it to be where someone can just sit down and read it and have an opinion, not read week by week. One of the reasons is I've seen a lot of those week by week people that write, they don't really improve their writing. I'm not saying that none of them do, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but like from reading like the first 2 months worth of someone's work to then 4 years later reading their newest chapters, they sound the same. They have the same problems, they have the same everything. And I feel like it's because they trap themselves in not just that writing style, but like in that world, in with those characters doing what those characters are doing. And a lot of the times I'll also be reading, and even if there is like character development or arcs or whatever, the characters are still the same. And it's like, how do you go 2,000 chapters and the characters still be the same person when they started? I don't understand. But that's just me and some of the gripes that I have with those things. And I see other people get stuck in it, and I would rather just avoid myself potentially falling in that same pitfall. Um, and again, this is just my take on it, my thoughts. I'm not criticizing anyone outwardly. Again, like I said, there's no wrong way to create. If they are having fun with it and enjoying it and they're happy with it, that's what's important, not my subjective opinion about it, right? Um, but that's just kind of how I do things, kind of where I'm at right now and what I've been doing and how I've been kind of pushing through. Um, I'm going to see how well, I'm still probably months away from actually finishing this because this was just supposed to be originally it was I wanted to write two short stories and then start working on the novel ideas I had. This short story seems to be turning into an actual novel. So now I'm worried about my actual novel ideas to where it's probably not just the three novels that I'm thinking. They're probably going to end up being much longer than three novels, just based off of how this one's going. This was and even my first short story, I didn't realize I wrote like 25 pages in like on Microsoft Word, and then I went and posted it online, and it said it was 50 pages. And then I went and talked to or like used one of the little. Hold on, let my brain catch up. I went on to see about getting it actually like professionally edited and published. And they told me that it was like 55 pages or something like that long. And I'm all like, I don't even understand. And then they told me, oh, well, it's on average like 265 words on a page or something like that. And then they just divided that out by the 13,000 words that it was. And they're all like, yeah, it's like 50 something. And apparently that's considered a novel, which that also doesn't make sense to me. But I'm about halfway through the story on this one. I'd say about halfway. I don't really know. I might add some stuff to it. Might take some other stuff out. I don't know. Cause if I see something doesn't work, I'm not afraid to just cut something out. Right? I don't get so stuck on things as maybe others do, and I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal or anything. But one of the main ways that I learned to write was actually another YouTube channel, which I'm going to just pop up here. TUBE. Oh, come on. .com. Now this is not for writing. Well, it's for writing, but it's for screenwriting, right? And there's a lot of very useful information here, but there's also a lot of very useful information for screenwriters, right? I've learned like my first hold on. I gotta actually type this out and look at it and get it going here. Um, it's very useful for screenwriters, but I've learned because I started watching a little bit of like Brandon Sanderson's content, and some of the things that he explained or said is that screenwriting tips does not translate to novels. A lot of it like can be useful, but then he picked out like one thing that really stuck with me is so screenwriters they cut and cut and cut and cut and cut content, right? They need to make their scripts as small as possible and so densely packed with whatever information they can, but yet still affording leniency to the actual directors and other people that they just cut and cut and cut and cut until it's like this big. It's like bite size, and then they turn that into a movie or what have you. So I was taking that information, right? I was taking that information and then putting it into writing. And Brandon Sanderson has essentially said, I've never cut anything from my books. Like, if I have the idea, it goes in. And that just kind of gobsmacked me. I'm all like, oh, okay. That's a very different take. That is the other extreme. And to me, it's just kind of like eye opening, right? Now, I'm still going to end up cutting a bunch of stuff, like in the final product, more than likely, but I'm going to be way less. How do I want to say it? Let's just say scissor happy, right? Because even in my first short story, there was some stuff that I really didn't want to cut, but I felt like um, it might have just made a scene hang for too long, so I ended up cutting it anyway. And I'm just going to, if I have something like that, I'm just not going to cut it. I'm just not going to worry as much, right? And here, hold on, let me actually, I said I was going to show it, and this is the other YouTube channel. I watched pretty much all of their content, um, for a long while. I don't know why these are saying that I didn't watch them. I definitely did watch these. Um, but either way, you can see right where I stopped watching them, which was right here, and that's because they went a year without posting, and then I didn't even see that. But either way, in general, this channel has a lot of really good stuff, just for any kind of creative, right? Don't get because like things like rewriting, things like getting stuck or lost, things like your writing process, right? Those are very important things to learn and to figure out for yourself, right? And no, and how do I want to say it? That can translate to just about any medium, right? Whereas screenwriting rules won't necessarily translate one to one for anyone trying to write novels and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Um, but that was just kind of like, how do I want to say it? A pitfall that I fell into, right? Something that I need to work on in general whenever it comes to writing is, so I'm still writing in first person. You can see by, if you look at like any of my actual stuff that I have here. I'm essentially writing it in first person right now, and then during the editing process or during the rewrite, I will go back and try my best to put it in third person, because some of it is in third person because I was trying to write in third person, but it's just so unnatural feeling to me to write in third person that like I'll just forget. Like I'll be writing and then mid sentence it'll switch from third to first, and then it'll be first for a while, and then I'll go, oh, it should be third, and then I'll go back to third, and then I'll go and try to fix it, but then sometimes I don't fix it, and it's just a mess. So at this point, I'm just gonna write it, and then during the rewrites or something like that, I will fix it. You know, that's kind of where I'm at and where my process is. I know it was a lot of rambling, and it's like a 21-minute video of just me rambling, but that's kind of where I'm at. If I think of anything else, I might make another video on it. I might do something like that, or maybe even um start making more videos on it. I don't know. We'll see how I feel about it in the future. But I think that's gonna be it for now. So I'm gonna say see you next time. Maybe.